way of saying Roll Tide. Let's talk about everything going on in the world of Alabama and how Coach DeBoer is starting to really play the part as Nick Saban's replacement. Let's get this thing going. Roll Tide. What do you say, everybody, with Big Elmo, my main man, Brett Elmore. I'm Mick Gillispie, at Broadcaster Mick, at Brett Elmore Show. And as you can tell, on assignment, but we had to get Sunday rollback done, Brett. There's so much to talk about. A big week for Kalen DeBoer, the new Alabama football coach. And this guy was crisscrossing the state this week.
Yes, he was. He hit the ground running, hit the pavement, and as my dad used to say, beating the bush. Beating the bushes, looking for players and shaking hands and meeting with folks. And, hey, man, I like the old school A. You know, I wear it from time to time. I think that's going to be making a comeback. I would like to see that. Do you like that better than the script A?
You know, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, and people got in the comments section, and they were like, yeah, they like the old school A. You know, I'm with you. I mean, I've got a couple of I've got a polo with the old school A on it. But like anything cool, it goes out of style, and then all of a sudden it comes back in style. So even though it's vintage, it still looks sweet. It
does. But back to DeBoer, he like the graphic says, starting to roll. He's starting to gain some momentum. I know, here in the state of Alabama, down in Montgomery, the annual high school football coaches association had their yearly meetings this past week. Coach DeBoer obviously was one of the guest speakers there, and I'm sure he spent a lot of time in the room talking with coaches, and that's a great event because everyone in the state is there as far as high school football coaches. So that is one good central meeting location for them all. So I'm sure he got to make a lot of contacts there in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And what we're seeing, too, is that he's starting to reel back in some of the guys that committed and then decommitted after Nick Saban retired. And one of those players that has not recommitted yet, but I think they have a good chance of getting, is Mason Short, not the Three Amigo, but Mason Short, the offensive lineman, reoffered. I think that's a big deal. I mean, I think it's a big deal that you're seeing guys like Ryan Williams, who we're going to talk about here in a second, but guys who were there backed off, and then now they're kind of getting to know Coach DeBoer, and they're realizing, hey, man, this guy's good.
Yeah, I think, that's the point there. They're after the initial shock of Coach Saban retiring and then naming a new coach within like 49 hours, everyone was reeling at that point, including the commitments and the players that were already in-house. However, the dust has settled. Everything is kind of clear now. And now these players are starting to really connect with Coach DeBoer, get to know him, get to know what kind of guy he is. And they're saying, you know what? This guy's not so bad, and he's got a proven record, obviously, and this might be a good guy and a good location for me to go.
Well, it's exciting. Another guy that's in town this week to keep an eye on is Amari Jefferson, the wide receiver, a 4-star. I think what you're going to see is that Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer are to offense what Nick Saban and Kirby Smart were to defense, right? And I think that you're going to see a lot of these guys, certainly some of these wide receivers that decommitted, are going to have second thoughts once they realize how good this offense is going to be. And I think that he's going to be able to reel in guys like Jefferson, who's in town. And what we've also seen is that a week ago, there were a whole host of guys that came to visit, right? Some pretty sought-after players. Ryan Williams from Saraland, the 5-star. Parker Brailsford from Washington. Jermaine Bernard from Washington. and Austin Mack from Washington, and then obviously Noah Carter from Washington. He got all those guys. Still working on a couple more, and then the commitment of Williams later in the week. But this guy's a closer, man. I mean, I think we're going to really like the way that he's able to connect with players.
Yeah, DeBoer and Grubb, the ultimate tag team of offensive coaches, I think. And yeah, you're right. I think they are. Well, they've been knowing one another and for a long time. And work together, but yeah, they're getting out there and getting after it. Ryan Williams, of course, that was the big one because he reopened his recruitment after Saban retired on the 10th, and then canceled that trip to Texas, and all eyes were on him this past week, and everyone started to say, 2022's Mr. Football's fixing to commit right back to Alabama, and he did, and then we followed that news with the 4-star edge guy, Noah Carter, 6'4", 220 from Arizona, played high school ball there in Arizona. He committed, and then it just started kind of rolling from there. But yeah, a big week for Alabama as far as the recruiting and getting some of these commitments back, and then also getting to know some of the coaches in state. And then they obviously are expanding out and in their footprint as well.
We had about 10 days where it felt like the entire program was crumbling. I mean, Nick Saban retired, and then all of a sudden they wanted to bring Tavarius Robinson back, right? He left for Georgia. They wanted to bring him back, and he turned down more money to stay there in essentially the same exact role, right? That he had at Alabama. Now, he would have been promoted had he come to work with Coach DeBoer and the Crimson Tide. And then all of a sudden you start having transfers, guys that you didn't want to see leave. Amari Nyblack leaves, the tight end. Isaiah Bond leaves for Texas. A bunch of guys, Florida State, but a lot of them were guys who were going to leave anyway. And then the one that hurt a lot, Caleb Downs, the freshman All-American, goes to the highest bidder, which was the Ohio State Buckeyes. Then they get their first quarterback, they get their first commit, Austin Mack, who was a 4-star quarterback, but the backup in Washington. And then all of a sudden, 5-star consensus 5-star, and some people's top quarterback, Julian saying he decommits, and you feel like, man, nothing's going to go right. Then last weekend, you could see things starting to change. Every time I watch DeBoer do interviews too, Brett, like he just seems so comfortable and relaxed. He's been through this before at Washington. And then this week was the week where things started to turn. But getting Ryan Williams, the Saraland wide receiver, to come back was huge because I think it sends the signal. This is a guy that everyone wants.
Right, yeah.
That DeBoer is worth listening to, and also that this guy, I'm guessing that from day one on campus, if he can handle it, he's going to be one of the top wide receivers on the team. Yeah,
absolutely. I do think it sent a signal out because that was the one that we lost, that everyone was very excited about. Of course, a 5-star, and for him to be able to recommit, I think that sends a shockwave. But like I mentioned before, it did feel like we were out on an island by ourselves there for a while. It was like nothing was going right. We're out there by our lonesome. We're losing everything. And then all of a sudden we get rescued. But, I guess that happens when the greatest coach of all time retires. And everyone just suddenly retires. We heard rumblings and everything else, but still it caught us all by surprise. And once the dust settled, this guy and DeBoer handled this whole situation really, really well. And you're right, as far as the interviews, anytime he speaks, he's very calm, but he's also very punctual on what his message is. And I found it interesting earlier in the week also about him talking about being in what was Coach Saban's office now. That's his chair and his desk, kind of what reality finally set in that, I'm the head football coach at the University of Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of weird to say, even for me. I mean, to think that this guy's the head coach of Alabama football, but he brings such a different demeanor to the job. And I always loved what Coach Saban brought to the table. And I'll be honest, when Coach Saban took over, he had to corral an athletic department that was moving in a lot of different directions. There were agendas with different coaches, different administrators. Mal tried to get it under control, but that really wasn't his expertise. He was great at raising money and, building facilities and obviously getting Nick Saban. But Nick Saban came in, and the minute he walked in, there was a new sheriff in town. I mean, you could hear him whistling. I mean, he was like Clint Eastwood, and so he was a lot tougher than coaches in the past. He corralled all of the boosters that needed to be corralled, and eventually, within 2 years, Alabama had a top-notch program. Coach DeBoer comes in. He smiles and he's nice and he does interviews and he is relatable. You can feel the positive energy. It's a totally different style, but I think that this athletic department can handle that now.
Well, that's one thing I was going to ask you. I mean, Coach Saban, let's just be brutally honest. I mean, very intimidating figure, especially when he first came in. Intimidating guy. And yeah, he was the iron fist. He ruled with an iron fist. And yeah, Coach DeBoer, you see him there. He's all smiles, and yeah, he seems to be extremely nice and does the interviews. Do you think this guy can rule with that iron fist, or is someone going to try to push him around a little bit?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be tested, and that's what I'm interested to see kind of how those things go behind the scenes. He's going to be pulled in a lot of different directions, and he's going to have to figure out fast who's with him and who's against him. And that's tough to do, when you come in and you're so excited to be there, you want to give everyone a fair chance. The other thing that he's going to be dealing with that Nick Saban really didn't have to is, dealing with how the funding's going to go for these players, these NIL deals, right? These guys are going to, what you've seen is that they constantly have their hands out for more money. What you committed to them the year before isn't good enough the next year, like with Caleb Downs, had a great season. And so, to hell with Alabama, I'm going to whoever pays me the most money. And that's kind of what we've seen with other programs and players, but we're going to see that now. Saban had a discount. And the discount was that players knew that if they did the things that they were asked to do, they could get to the NFL. Coach DeBoer is going to have to develop that himself. But at the same time, he did a wonderful job of that at Washington. And I think the other thing is that as alumni and Alabama fans, we're going to have to get behind the NIL. It was something that we didn't have to do as much with Saban because we got that discount. We don't get that anymore. And we're just going to have to figure out a way to do that, which a lot of us have a problem with a, $2 billion plus corporation asking us for money. But, but at the same time, as Alabama tries to figure out ways to make these players, more marketable, as fans, we do need to step in and help, and if that's paying $20 a month for, some kind of membership, or if you have big money and you can donate, which has been the way it's always gone down, then we're going to have to get that done for Coach DeBoer, because you don't want to fall behind. And it's easy in this conference now that you're adding Oklahoma and Texas, two big money schools, to have that happen.
Yeah, you're right. And we can get in on that NIL deal, and I can get on the soapbox about that, because I just don't, and I've said it before, I just don't think the common fan will buy into a $20 subscription every month when they can barely afford to living expenses as they can now, as it is now. So I don't like the whole NIL deal. I think something's going to have to change because this is just not college football to me. Like I mentioned before, the common fan, a family of four, they can't afford to go to a ball game anymore. No, it's not like it used to be.
Right.
And you could barely even find tickets anymore, which that's a good problem to have. But still, we've got to find a way. But you can't tell me that the big money support and this university that we can't come up with enough money to compete with Ohio State and some of these others, and like Ole Miss, give me a break.
I know. Hey, they're spending some big money there.
Yeah, where in the hell is this money coming from? At Ole Miss.
I know. Well,
but they're ahead of the game, and that's something that I think Coach Saban failed at.
Let's talk about another coach and a guy who Alabama played in the national champion or in the Rose Bowl this year. Jim Harbaugh. He goes to the NFL. And I mean, think about this now. Harbaugh goes to the NFL. So that means that for 30 days, players from Michigan can transfer. And we'll see if they get hit as hard as Alabama does. They're hiring from within. So I'm guessing that a lot of those players will have second thoughts about leaving the program. But we'll find out. I mean, money's money. With that said, how about the fact that 3 of the 4 coaches that got to the national championship game have left their programs? Nick Saban retired. Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington to go to Alabama, which means that Steve Sarkisian at Texas is the only guy that's still in this program.
Yeah, that's wild to think, wild to imagine. But I think Harbaugh, he left for obvious reasons. I think their program's going to get hit, and I feel really bad for the guy taking over for him because I feel like he's going to be the scapegoat in all this, and he's going to be the one that has to weather through the storm of what might possibly happen. Michigan, they wanted him to stay so bad, Harbaugh, including offering to make him the highest paid college football coach, and also pretty much writing him off if to blame on anything that happened with the NCAA. Right. That's how bad they want to win. But I think it's a different situation as far as the transfer portal is concerned, because you're right, because they're hiring from within. I think a lot of those players will probably stick around, but if they start believing everything about the NCAA coming down with sanctions or whatever, they may jump ship left and right.
Yeah, and I mean that could happen. Plus, I mean, there's going to be a lot of money that's thrown at these guys. What we've seen with Alabama and Washington is that these players are making a ton of money going other places, and it's tough to keep them.
Yeah, it is. So 30-day window. We'll see what happens there. But I'm like you, though, and because we've talked about it for, it seems like months, that we just thought Harbaugh was going to go to the NFL one way or the other, and finally landed with the Chargers, which I think is a pretty good fit for him. And let's face it, the guy's a heck of a coach. No doubt. He'll do well back in pro ball.
So this week you got the Senior Bowl in Mobile. That's always a big deal. Guys that play in college get the opportunity to go there and show off. And the Alabama players obviously get a lot more love than some of the other guys, just because they're Alabama players. Like, who are some of the guys that you're looking forward to seeing? I'm sure Chris Braswell's got to be at the top of the list. I mean, he's been so good and so tough. And he's one of those guys you really hate to lose if you're Alabama, just because of what he brings to the table. But the Senior Bowl is a great opportunity for, for guys like Braswell just to go one more time, get in front of all the teams and, and kind of just work on their draft status,
Yeah, it's I like the Senior Bowl. I mean, it's like like you kind of mentioned, just a glorified. Well, it's a game, but it was more of a glorified scrimmage in front of a bunch of pro coaches to get your name and stock out there some more. I look forward to it because we're without football. It seems like
I know
we've got a few pro games left, but it comes at a right time. It comes at a good time because there's no football on. So yeah, I'll watch it and just see some of the guys.
Justin Bigby is another guy from Alabama that you'll see in the game. It's always you turn around and you see these guys. Will Reichard, Alabama's all-time greatest place kicker, is going to be there. So, that'll be fun. It's not two-hand touch, but it's kind of like a two-hand touch type of game. But you know what? In Mobile, right across the bay from where I live, everybody gets so excited about the Senior Bowl. And I know that they do so much work to get ready for this football game. So it's always a fun event. You sometimes all the coaches are there. I'm sure that Coach DeBoer is looking forward to his first Senior Bowl. You go down, and even though it's not recruiting, you'll see a lot of. And I'm guessing that Coach DeBoer will go, but you see just so many people that are around the NFL and college football. And like, I remember going out last year and running into like entire front offices at different bars down on Dolphin Street, So anyway, but the Baltimore native, Chris Braswell, who is such a good player on the Alabama team, kind of, to me, he's headlining him and Will Reichard, the entire game, in my opinion, right? I mean,
hey, I don't know. I have a soft spot for Will Reichard for some reason because we went so long. It seemed like where anytime we ever had to kick a field goal, I would turn my back to the TV. But it was scary. But Will had a great career in Alabama. But yeah, the one key about the Senior Bowl is, do not get hurt. That's the only thing, that's one last game that really doesn't matter. But yeah, go out, have fun, but don't get hurt.
No, don't get hurt. Well, another exciting week, Brett, in Alabama football. And obviously we will be covering it as things go down. But I think we've kind of hit it all for today. Any final thoughts on this edition of Sunday Rollback?
No, just it seems like things are calming down a little bit. I think last Sunday we had such a wild, show with Chad and joining us as well, and but it seems like things are kind of slowing down a little bit, and that's okay. But obviously there'll be some more news. You're from parts unknown now. When does Mardi Gras start, by the way?
Mardi Gras is like I think second week of February this year, so pretty early.
So you're not in some sort of Mardi Gras location. So we'll keep
No. Boca, Key West, heading down to the Keys. So we'll pop on. Look, I'll do it. I work on vacation. I mean, if there's something to talk about, but I appreciate you hanging. And I want to remind everyone, if you want a vacation, think about Pearl River Resort over in Choctaw, Mississippi. They've got the Timeout Sports Lounge, the sports book where you can go in Vegas style and gamble on the NFL playoffs, Super Bowl. You can, do college basketball this time of year, baseball when it starts up, NBA basketball, NASCAR. They got it all there. 20 big screen TVs, watch all the action, and sit back, relax. Really a fun place at the Golden Moon Casino. They got table games and slots. They've got Dancing Rabbit Golf Course. So if you want to practice for your PGA, like Dunlap did for Alabama last week, you can do that at Dancing Rabbit. It's the Augusta You Can Play. They got a spa. They've got great concerts and events there. The Wallflowers are coming. Also, Ron White, the comedian's going to be there. So a lot of really cool stuff at Pearl River Resort.
Hey, did you hear who they added?
Who'd they add, Brett?
The smooth R&B sounds of Brian McKnight.
Oh, man. See, every time you turn around, it's something cool coming to Pearl River Resort.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, and we will do it again real soon. Roll Tide, everybody. And hopefully this week's even better than last week, because this week was a good one.